This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Two suicide bomb attacks leave Tunisia's capital reeling. 58 people arrested in Ethiopia over attempted coup in Amhara region. And world leaders gather in Japan for the two-day G20 summit. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Karen Roberts, live in Nairobi. Penina joins you now with all your business headlines.
Thank you, Karen. And coming up in business news tonight, gold companies in Zimbabwe to retain part of their sales in US dollars and not in the new currency. And more than 50 African countries are taking part in the first Economic and Trade Expo in Changsha, China. I'll have details of those stories and plenty more in just a bit. For now, Karen, back to you.
Thank you, Penina. President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe have praised the development of relations between China and Japan. The two leaders met ahead of the G20 summit in Osaka. Both agree that joint efforts are necessary in building ties that fit the needs of modern times. They vowed to enhance political mutual trust and properly handle sensitive issues and strengthen communication and security. Xi said and Abe said that they will expand cooperation in technology and intellectual property rights protection. They also pledged to work together to uphold multilateralism and the free trade system. They agree that China and Japan should fulfill their responsibilities on global issues like climate change and arms control. The two countries are also set to strengthen cultural and people-to-people exchanges. Well, President Xi also held talks with his South Korean counterpart, Moon Jae-in. Xi Jinping said the two countries should work to ensure peace and stability on the Korean peninsula, and he called for a quicker pace in the second phase of negotiations for a bilateral free trade agreement and taking advantage of the Belt and Road Initiative. He also called for more cooperation in trade, technology, finance and environmental protection. Moon Jae-in said South Korea is willing to deepen bilateral cooperation in various fields. He said his country would work with China to defend multilateralism, free trade and an open world economy. Let's now head to Geneva, where a group of Palestinian, Israeli and international experts are gathered for the International Conference on the Question of Jerusalem. They're addressing the issue of Israel's policies and measures to change the character of Jerusalem. Julia Liobova has more from Geneva.
The International Conference on Jerusalem in Geneva opened with the Palestinian side denouncing the US economic plan for the Middle East. The plan provides for a $50 billion investment in the Palestinian territories and was presented by the US President's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, in Bahrain earlier this week. But it stops short of mentioning whether the US endorses a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. According to the Palestinian side, the plan lacks legitimacy and was weak in representation with no Palestinian officials present. This and other issues are being raised at the conference in Geneva, which takes place in Switzerland for the first time in the conference's 6-year history. The question of Jerusalem is at the heart of the Palestinian issue. It is a holy city with 3 religions, and the state of Palestine considers it its capital. In December 2017, there was a major shift in the US policy towards the Palestinian issue when Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and opened the US embassy there. Since then, talks on a two-state solution have been at a stalemate. However, parties present in the Geneva conference hope that it can give a push towards putting the two-state solution into reality. Julia Lyubova, CGTN, Geneva, Switzerland.
At least one person has died following 2 terrorist attacks in downtown Tunis Hundreds of policemen, National Guard and anti-terror units were deployed. The first suicide attack took place at the entry of the old city of Tunis. The second attacker blew himself up in the parking lot of the anti-terror units building in Tunis.
A municipal police officer wounded in a suicide attack perpetrated at the Avenue de France, downtown Tunis, has died. 2 police officers and 3 civilians were injured during this attack. The terrorist blew himself up in front of the police patrol. Eyewitnesses say the blast was strong.
The scene was horrible. The attack is symbolic because it took place at a strategic location where thousands of Tunisians meet in the morning. It is a shopping avenue where several important buildings are located.
A second terrorist attempted to enter the anti-terrorism unit's building. He blew himself up at the parking of the high-security facility. Analysts assert that terror cells aim to destabilize Tunisia economically and politically, a few months before the holding of the legislative and presidential elections.
The successive bombings mean that terrorists do not want Tunisians to live in peace. The whole political transition is the target. The attack hit the capital, but will impact the economy, because downtown Tunis is a tourist destination.
Many Tunisians have gathered near the bombing site. They denounce the suicide attacks and express solidarity with the victims and the security forces.
We send condolences to the family of the victim and all Tunisians. He's a martyr who died for the country. The security forces and the national army are the guardians of the state. We support them in their fight against terrorists who can't defeat Tunisians.
Tunisian President Beji Qaid Essebsi, who is severely ill, was rushed to the military hospital in Tunis. 3 weeks ago, Qaid Essebsi had declared a state of emergency nationwide to face a growing terror threat.
According to the Interior Minister, the anti-terrorism units have foiled dozens of terror plots in many regions. Over 30 suspects were arrested in recent months. However, the vigilance of the state did not prevent the bombing in Habib Bourguiba Avenue. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, staying in Tunisia, President Beji Qaid Essebsi's office announced that he is now in a stable condition after being taken to a military hospital. He was taken there after suffering a serious health crisis. The 92-year-old has been a major player in the country's transition to democracy. He acted as Prime Minister following the 2011 uprising, which overthrew Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. He was then elected president 3 years later. He announced in June that he would not seek a second term in this year's presidential election. Well, CGTN's Adnan Shawashi joins us now on the line from Tunis. Adnan, let's begin with the reports from the presidency. What's the latest on the health of the president, Beji Qaid Essebsi?
The health condition of President Beji Qaid Essebsi is stable. This is according to his personal doctor, to the doctors at the military hospital in the capital city, Tunis. It is also the case, the same comment according to his son, his family, and his advisors. The presidency's spokesperson said that the president's situation is stable. The president was ill since last week. Last week he was also rushed to a military hospital where he spent 1 day, and then he returned to the presidential palace. The problem with the health condition of the president is the timing, which is it happened nearly at the same time during the bombing in downtown Tunis. So people were confused. Because of the terrorist attack, but also by the health condition of the president. But according to the Tunisian constitution, even if the president is ill, he could give the parliament speaker the right to rule the country until the holding of the next legislative and presidential elections.
And Adnan, let's talk about the twin bomb attacks in Tunis. What are the authorities saying about the attackers and the wounded?
For the moment, there is no clear information on who's responsible, who's behind the terrorist attack. But many security analysts here in Tunisia say it might be ISIL or Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. ISIL because of the following the return of hundreds of ISIL militants who are based in Syria and Iraq and also in Libya. So no one has claimed responsibility for the attack, and security forces and the interior ministries investigators say they will reveal the identities in the next few hours. The technical police arrived very early at the scene and collected evidence in order to identify the perpetrators of the two terrorist attacks. But it's clear they were not lone wolves. They did not act on their own. They had some logistical and technical support in order to be able to target the police patrol in downtown Tunis, and also to attempt to enter the main facility of the anti-terrorism unit in Tunis. They did not operate on their own.
And one of the two attacks happened close to the French embassy. Have the police established whether the embassy itself was a target?
No, it is clear that the embassy was not the target of the attack. The target of the attack was a police patrol which was about 800 meters from the French embassy. The French embassy is very well secured, and it was not the target. So the target is Tunisian policemen, not foreigners, not foreign tourists, not civilians. The target was policemen. And this, unfortunately, there were targets, and there was one victim, but the target was the police patrol and not the French embassy in Tunis.
What is the situation like in Tunis right now?
In downtown Tunis, it's stable. It's stable. Hundreds of policemen have been deployed, and in downtown Tunis, you can see people shopping, sitting at cafes, as if nothing happened today. Of course, people are sad because there was one victim, one civilian who died. But at the same time, people are trying to resume a normal life because Tunisia is expecting a very good tourist season in 2019, especially in the summer. So shops have opened, cafes have opened again, and they are trying to resume a normal life. But vigilance persists. Security forces are still extremely vigilant.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was CGTN's Adnan Shawashi there joining us on the line from Tunis following those two suicide attacks in downtown Tunis. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, police have arrested 56 members of the National Movement of Amhara, an opposition political party. They were arrested in Addis Ababa in connection with a failed coup attempt in the northern Amhara region. The country has been on edge since an army chief and 4 other senior officials were killed in 2 separate attacks. Well, according to the government, the attacks were orchestrated by a rogue general, Asamino Tiga, and his militia. The government said Asamino was killed by the military in a firefight near his hideout in Amhara's capital, Bahia Dar. So far, 6 people have been charged over the attempted coup. The internet was shut down across the country on Saturday following the attacks, but has been partially restored. To Madagascar now, where the country is in mourning. At least 16 people were crushed to death and dozens of others were wounded at an independence rally in the capital Antananarivo. Authorities fear the death toll could rise as many of the wounded are in a critical condition. Witnesses say the incident occurred after security forces opened the gates to allow spectators to leave the enclosure, causing the crowd to gather outside the stadium. Police then immediately closed the gates and blocked the crowd, causing a deadly pile-up. Madagascar's President André Rajoelina and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame offered their condolences over the tragic loss of life.
Among the evacuees we had, 15 people died before getting to the hospital. The 16th person died after arriving at the hospital. When we examined him, we saw that he was brain dead already.
To help you face this ordeal, here is a modest consolation from us all and also my condolences.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa defends his State of the Nation address after opposition backlash. And experts blame depression for rising suicide cases among young Nigerians.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
For lucrative economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa stands by the State of the Nation address he delivered in his country's parliament last Thursday. Opposition parties slammed the president's speech for expressing his hopes and dreams, but lacking substance and concrete plans to take South Africa forward. He addressed the National Assembly on Wednesday to reply to the opposition party's criticism. Rennie Delcam has more.
On Tuesday, President Cyril Ramaphosa sat through 10 hours of opposition parties tearing apart his first State of the Nation address to this House, the 6th democratically elected parliament in South Africa. On Wednesday, he hit back, saying that his State of the Nation speech had not merely been about dreams, but reality. He said it was about setting out what South Africans needed to do to achieve the country that they wanted.
This SONA was about setting out the 7 priorities of the administration, namely economic transformation and job creation, education, skills and health, consolidating the social wage through reliable and quality basic services, spatial integration, human settlements and local government, social cohesion and safe communities, a capable, ethical and developmental state, and a better Africa and a better world. As we said then, and we will repeat today, building the South Africa we want starts now, and it's a process that should involve all of us.
President Ramaphosa said South Africa's most pressing task was to stimulate growth, to restart the economy and create jobs. There'd be no quick fixes or shortcuts, he said, but South Africa was working towards becoming an entrepreneurial state.
We are committed to restore investor confidence through greater policy certainty and consistency. Alongside our investment drive, much detailed work is being directed towards reducing the cost as well as improving the ease of doing business. We are determined to achieve our goal of being among the top 50 global performers in the World Bank's annual Doing Business report within the next 3 years.
President Ramaphosa will travel to Osaka, Japan for the G20 summit this week. And 2 weeks from now, he'll attend the African Union summit in Niger, where African nations will meet to discuss bold plans to promote economic integration in Africa. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
The Technical and Scientific Police Unit of the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali continues to help bring the perpetrators of multiple attacks in the West African nation to justice. CGTN's Laura Walubengo has more.
Ethnic violence and the presence of Islamic extremists has risen steadily in central Mali in recent years. At least 95 people were killed following an attack in central Mali less than 3 weeks ago. The Technical and Scientific Police Unit of the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali has been instrumental in the criminal proceedings.
The work of the Technical and Scientific Police is clearly written in the MINUSMA mandate that is fighting impunity. So the laboratory is working every day with the goal of helping the Malian justice system to fight impunity.
With the evidence collected, the PTS officers work closely with the Malian authorities to identify perpetrators of the crime.
We also assist the Human Rights Division of the MINUSMA, especially on the village attack that happened recently in central Mali. The goal here is to help them establish the truth of the facts and also collect the evidence, which will then be transferred to the Malian justice authorities. Permettront d'être transmises ensuite à la justice malienne.
The humanitarian situation in the West African nation remains dire, with over 800 schools forced to close due to insecurity and at least 2.3 million people in need of food assistance, according to the UN. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Nigeria is dealing with a high rate of suicide. Over 40 suicides have been reported across the country this year alone, with young people making up the majority of reported cases. The issue is giving many in the West African nation a serious cause for concern. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more on that story.
Hardly does a month go by these days in Nigeria without reported cases of suicide. In 2018, about 80 Nigerians died by suicide. 6 months now gone into 2019, about 15 suicide cases have been reported across the country. Experts say depression is mainly to blame.
Depression comes with a feeling of hopelessness, and most of the time it comes with a lot of pain, a lot of emotional pain and sadness, and the individual is usually aware that he's depressed or she's depressed, but cannot find a way out by himself or herself. And they want all the symptoms to stop. And because they feel helpless, usually they have one of two options. Either they find external help, because at that point they might not be able to help themselves, or they try and end it through suicide.
In recent months, most of the victims have been young people, mainly undergraduates, and in many of the cases, the victims had gone on social media to announce it before engaging in the act.
I call it the copycat suicide. They see other people doing it, and it's being publicized on social media, and you don't see people publicizing people getting help. You hardly see tweets of, I got help today. There is help for depression, I got help. It's suicide. If you notice, the methods and the methods of suicide are being reproduced. It's the same thing. So all this have combined to drive up the rates of suicide in the country amongst the youths.
Worried by the trend, groups like this one have been staging public works aimed at drawing attention to the problem and taking action against it.
It's not something we are used to in the past, and we feel that we should be able to bring this scourge and this problem that is happening to the attention of government and relevant agencies, and that is why we are organizing the work.
Most of the suicide victims had died by poisoning, consuming a local pesticide known as sniper. The government has now directed that the product be withdrawn from the open market with immediate effect, and the use of the pesticide has also been restricted to farmers alone. But beyond that, Nigeria has severe shortage of mental health facilities and professionals. The country's Ministry of Health estimates that about 60 million Nigerians suffer from mental illness. But the country has less than 500 trained psychiatrists working in less than 20 psychiatric hospitals.
I think the government should partner with the private sector to provide more mental health facilities for young people to be able to go to when they have challenges with mental health illnesses. It might not be depression, it might be anxiety, it might be an eating disorder, it might be anything. They need help.
Nigeria still has a long way to go in terms of giving mental health the kind of attention it deserves. Apart from facilities, the government would have to do something to stop the massive brain drain the country currently suffers in the field of psychiatry. It's estimated that 3 out of every 5 Nigerian psychiatrists leave the country after their education. One thing though is certain, with the increasing rate of suicide across the country, authorities will sure come under immense pressure to act and act quickly before things get out of control. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
According to a new report by UNICEF and the World Health Organization, millions in Africa and the Middle East region are continuing to suffer from poor access to water, sanitation and hygiene. Tunisia has achieved the highest access rates to water supply and sanitation services among countries in the Middle East and North Africa.
Doctors and parliamentarians have gathered in Tunis. They discussed the latest report by UNICEF and World Health Organization on the challenge of providing water to millions of people in Africa and the Arab region. Experts noted that children are the most affected by the poor access to water.
It's an alarming number for African and Arab countries. It affects the health condition of the people, especially children. The poor access to water causes several diseases in our region due to lack of hygiene.
The Health Committee at the Tunisian Parliament has urged the government and the national water company SONED to provide drinking water, especially in the regions of Kasserine, Gafsa and the governorates south of the country.
In Tunisia, we have some places where we have this problem. Usually we arrived at almost around 95% of the population would have access to the water. But some places in the remote area we still have some difficulties.
Tunisia has put a lot of effort since the 1960s into providing safe drinking water. The water in major urban areas is safe to drink from the tap. The problem has been resolved in nearly all neighborhoods in the capital city Tunis since the 1990s.
Authorities assert that drinking water will be available to 100% of the population by 2020.
Tunisians have the right to complain about the poor access to water in some areas. We'll do our best to provide sanitation and water to all citizens.
In 2018, access to safe drinking water became close to universal, approaching 100% in urban areas and 90% in rural zones in Tunisia. Experts say SONED provides good quality drinking water throughout the year. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's now go to Penina for all the latest business news. Over to you.
Thank you, Karen. And coming up on Africa Live Business. Gold companies in Zimbabwe to retain part of their sales in US dollars and not in the new currency. And more than 50 African countries are taking part in the first Economic and Trade Expo in Changsha, China.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Zimbabwe's central bank has allayed fears that gold companies and people receiving money transfers in the US dollars may not access the cash after an end to a multiple currency regime on Monday. Zimbabwe declared its interim RTGS dollar the only legal tender. The decision has caused uncertainty among businesses and people who rely on remittances from the large Zimbabwean diaspora. Banks have now been directed to maintain the existing payment arrangements for large-scale gold producers. Individuals will also receive remittances in their foreign currency accounts. Gold producers keep 55% of their sales proceeds in foreign currency, with the remainder being surrendered to the central bank. After Monday's currency reform, half of the balance kept by the central bank will now be sold on the interbank forex market. A focus on trade between China and Africa now. The first China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo has gotten underway in Changsha. More than 10,000 Chinese and African officials and business representatives will be on hand during the three-day event. Officials from both sides have promised to solidify trade cooperation and industrial development. Chinese President Xi Jinping said in a letter that China and Africa need to expand their bilateral cooperation with good momentum, especially in trade.
China is the largest developing country in the world, while Africa is the home to the largest number of developing countries. Now China and Africa have many common features in transforming their growth model, in improving people's lives and conducting cooperation. We have a strong desire for cooperation.
This first China-Africa Trade Expo could not have been held at a better time than now, when we have a shared vision for the prosperity of our peoples. We all appreciate that industrial development and free trade amongst ourselves.
Tunisia's Ministry of Investment has launched a digital investor support platform to digitize investment operations. It's part of the country's efforts to become a hub for investment by 2030.
This platform features 6 different services and is targeting potential investors for Tunisia.
The electronic platform offers applications for investment declaration, legal formalities to set up a company, requests for benefits under projects of national interest, requests for financial incentives, applications for authorization and requests for queries.
This measure is part of the structural economic reform project to improve the investment climate and ease administrative procedures.
The Ministry of Investment and International Cooperation, the Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy, the government's research units and the Employment Ministry are partners in this project, which simplifies end investment procedures thanks to technology.
Experts assert that the digital investor support platform will attract Tunisian, African and foreign investors in different fields, including industry, agriculture, real estate and infrastructure, among others.
Now the African and foreign investors can access the Tunisian market easily, and the Tunisians can boost their trade with African partners. The support program offers incentives in logistics, transport and installation.
15 investment operations have already been secured through the Tunisia Investment Authority until June 15, 2019. The overall cost is $200 million. Investments would generate about 3,750 jobs.
Tunisian Premier Youssef El-Shahed noted during a meeting with businessmen and officials that Tunisia and all African countries must rely on digital technology as a lever for sustainable development. El-Shahed added that digitization is the cornerstone of any successful economic activity. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Over in South Africa, staff at government-owned military equipment manufacturer Denel breathed a sigh of relief when management found a local bank prepared to lend it money to pay the outstanding payroll for June. The payroll shortfall highlighted the crisis at Denel, but it's a challenge facing many of the country's state-owned businesses. Analysts now argue there are deeper challenges affecting profitability.
I think we must look beyond the headlines of some of the liquidity challenges that the company faces at the moment. Many companies in different geographies around the world face liquidity challenges. It's as a consequence of a multitude of factors. Number one, economic factors. Number two, changing dynamics in terms of relationships with traditional partners. As an example, Denel was unable to do work in India up until about 6 to 8 months ago when the president of South Africa went across to India and negotiated a deal or finalized an agreement that got Denel to go and continue to do work in India. So there's opportunities in markets like India, which is a BRICS partner. So I think it's important that we look at the Denel environment and the sustainability of Denel beyond the short-term liquidity challenges that it has. And so I think the first and most important challenge for the company, for the board and the executive team, is to be able to think about how do we get through the short-term liquidity challenges that we have.
Young researchers at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research have developed an autonomous 3D navigation, a robot system that can move between indoor and outdoor environments and navigate autonomously in either without assistance from GPS. The young researchers are at the forefront of cutting-edge research related to fourth industrial revolution technologies aimed at improving the quality of life of the country's citizens. CGTN's Yulisa Jamela has more.
The Council for Scientific and Industrial Research is the biggest research institution on the continent. The institution has over the years ensured that young people are also at the forefront of groundbreaking research in this field. Briefing the media on the latest developments, which include the autonomous 3D navigation, the young researchers have urged the youth to use their technological knowledge and skills as an advantage to thrive in the digital revolution. They desire for other young people to start thinking outside the box and become more creative and innovative in order to seize the opportunities presented by the 4IR.
We want to make sure that the future generation is well placed within the industries so that our future investment as a country do not go unseen, and we have proper people that we've trained to gain the momentum as they go. One way we always tell them is that doing science and engineering is probably the best way to position yourself within this sector of 4IR or 3D printing.
The CSIR is working on a number of projects and models for robotic operations. They've developed the autonomous 3D navigation, a robot system that can move between indoor and outdoor environments and navigate autonomously in either, without assistance from GPS. The robot performs autonomous exploration and mapping of its environment and transmits the information wirelessly to a remote operator console.
Through fourth industrial revolution, we can be able to produce an intelligent robots, the ones that can perform different tasks like feeding elders at old age homes, feeding people with disabilities, robots conducting surgical procedures, robots working with chemicals and so forth.
These young people want other young people to use their technological knowledge and skills as an advantage to thrive in this space, especially for young females.
Learn how to code if they want to learn how to code, learn how a robot like walk around, go to a robot, like just have like basic interaction with the robot, move it around, see if it can move, open one tool and see if the tool maybe will damage a robot or something like that. Like with that type of learning, like it gives like a person a confidence in wanting to like understand what's the next stage, what can a robot perform next, which is what like most female like we kind of fear as compared to men.
The team is also developing the ability for a robot to learn to perform new action sequences that it gets through demonstration. The South African government has already stated its intention to be the leader in the advent of the fourth industrial revolution. With that in mind, the cabinet last month approved the white paper on science, technology and innovation, which identifies the 4IR as a key focus. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
We shall leave it there for now, but ahead on Global Business, the first China-Africa Trade and Economic Expo gets underway in Changsha, Hunan Province, and we have the latest from the inaugural event. That's at the top of the hour, and I will see you then. For now, Karen, back to you.
Thank you very much, Panina. Well, we are going to a break now. Don't go away, lots more to come, including Colombia's famed underground Salt Cathedral hosts a flashy fashion show to celebrate Africa Fashion Week.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's cross over to Rwanda, where women are now breaking into the male-dominated world of motorcycle taxis. Through an initiative run by Safe Motos, underprivileged women in the East African country are recruited, trained and later employed by the Rwanda-based motorcycle taxi company. Here's CGTN's Jane Keogh with more.
The sight of motorcycle taxis driven by men in Rwanda's capital, Kigali, is not unusual. But seeing women riders is rare. Motor taxis are the main mode of transport in Kigali because they are inexpensive, fast, and are very useful during the city's hellish rush hour traffic. 21-year-old Lois Karegea is among a growing group of women riders who are breaking the mold in an industry that is mainly dominated by men. She works for Safe Motors, the first motorcycle taxi company in Rwanda that has started employing women as drivers.
Initially, people would refuse to ride with us and will say that they have never heard of a woman riding motorcycles. But now, things have changed. People are now used to us and some customers even recommend us to their friends.
The women say the opportunity to handle the motorcycles does not only provide them with employment, but also gives them an opportunity to become financially independent. In a day, they get between 15 to 20 passengers, taking home between 14 and 19 US dollars.
Usually, women are careful riders. They pay attention when they are on the road compared to men. Men are always in a hurry, always taking off in a hurry, but women take their time and ride carefully.
Safe Motors has created a recruiting and training initiative called Women Riders in Rwanda that empowers and encourages more women to get behind the handlebars.
We are helping women who are poor, who don't give money to give to the company, so they are not able to pay for their school fees because they have to go through the schools to get the knowledge. So they don't have the means to pay for their school fees. They don't have the means to pay for their equipment to get on the road and start to work.
The Rwanda Taxi Motor Federation says only 20 female drivers have been registered, compared to the 25,000 male operators it has. Jane Keogh, CGTN.
Colombia's famed underground Salt Cathedral was the site of a glitzy fashion show to celebrate Africa Fashion Week. The annual event kicked off below ground, approximately 590 feet amid the dazzling hand-carved caverns of the Salt Cathedral. Let's take a look.
Located outside Colombia's capital city of Bogota in Zipaquirá, this year's African Fashion Week focused on celebrating Africa's rich culture.
Very few times do we hear Africa mentioned alongside fashion. We have a rich fashion scene in Africa. We have great stylists and models, but the industry wants to downplay the African name, the African culture. The importance of events like this is that it is lifting up the strength of African culture. Hopefully, this does not just end here, but that it grows and that other countries also take up this initiative.
According to statistics, Colombia has a 26% Afro population, and this year's Fashion Week put on the national agenda the importance of diversity in the fashion industry while promoting the inclusion of Afro-Colombian models and queens on the national catwalks.
Entrepreneurship, talent, art and culture define African Fashion Week. I feel that it's necessary to advocate for Africa. It's necessary to speak for Africa with honor, respecting the contributions that Africa has made to humanity. The first hominids were found in Africa, and what has happened in that image of the people born on this continent has been distorted and damaged. I feel it is important to re-evaluate the meaning of race.
With the support of the fashion greats in the diaspora who hope to bring African fashion to new audiences, the event also championed the support of foundations for women and children living with cancer. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Madagascar take first win with a 1-0 defeat against Burundi.
Africa, where champions are made